Welcome to WebRTC Live. In WebRTC Live, we cover the latest technical topics and business use cases for WebRTC and live video. As always, this episode is brought to you by WebRTC.Ventures, leading integrators of WebRTC video into your custom application.
Welcome back to WebRTC Live. I'm your host, Aaron Son, founder and CEO of WebRTC.Ventures. WebRTC.Ventures is a custom design and development agency focused on building live video applications, and we're to help you here to help you take your application live. You can learn more about us at WebRTC.Ventures. Thanks for joining us live today on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitch, and welcome to any of you watching a replay of today's event. For those of you with us live, you can ask questions throughout the stream by leaving a comment in whichever platform you're viewing this. For today's episode, I'm joined by Court Schuett, who will show us how to connect WebRTC and SIP with the Amazon Chime SDK. Court is the head of developer advocacy for the Amazon Chime SDK at AWS, where he has also served as a Chime specialist solution architect. Previously, he spent 14 years at Verizon, rising to a DMTS, the highest level of recognition for a technical resource at Verizon. Thanks for joining me today, Court. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me. This is great.
No, it's a pleasure to have you join. We got to meet up at Enterprise Connect earlier this year down in Orlando. And so we had, it was a really interesting conversation, conference in general, saw a lot of interesting things there. And certainly the topic of WebRTC and video and call center and the enterprise certainly came up there. So very relevant to our conversation today.
They're all kind of blended together now.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is interesting. I mean, these were really pretty distinct topics just a few years ago. And now you see WebRTC and call center quite blended. And then also, and this also came up a lot in Enterprise Connect as well, including in Amazon presentations around AI and ML services also integrated into the enterprise and the call center and WebRTC. So all these things are overlapping more and more, which makes the interface points of them really important. So that's, interesting part of our conversation today, of which you'll be sharing with us, of how to integrate WebRTC video or audio into call center via SIP. So appreciate you joining us today. Let's switch over to your slides, and Court's going to go through a little presentation for us. Again, for those of you watching live, you can ask questions anytime, whatever platform you're viewing this, and we'll address, if we don't address those during Court's presentation, we'll definitely address them at the end of it. So feel free to just ask a question at any point. All right, Court, let's switch over to you.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks everyone. And just want to give a little bit of background about some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. I work on the Amazon Chime SDK. The Amazon Chime SDK is comprised of a couple different parts and features, so it gets a little confusing when we're talking about it. There's kind of two fairly distinct things, and this is not even everything. We have other parts and pieces that we're not going to be talking about today. But we have a WebRTC component and then kind of a telephony part, and each of those has their own separate parts. And what we're going to do today is we're going to put these things together. So we're going to be able to use one of these parts as sort of a bridge between the WebRTC side and the telephony side. And that's where we're going to do some interesting things, where we can turn a WebRTC call into a SIP call. So let's take a look at how we're going to do that. So at the very basic level, the Amazon Chime SDK WebRTC part is comprised of the backend components, and then from the front end we have a JavaScript client, we have iOS and Android client, and we have React components. So we can use these different clients in order to build up a web page, a mobile app, kind of a React app that you can build and deploy quickly with these components. And so this is going to make it easy for you to build that WebRTC front end. And we're going to show you how to do that here in just a second. And the cool thing about what we're talking about today is all of this stuff is readily deployable. So you can take all of this and deploy it into your own AWS account, have this demo up and running in 10-15 minutes or so. So when we talk about the Amazon Chime SDK WebRTC part, what we're really talking about is the ability to take a client and use our WebRTC servers, our turn servers, and things like that with the AWS SDK to control when I create a meeting, when I create an attendee, and bring these two people together. So in this particular case, we have an Amazon Chime SDK for JS client on one side, and we have another on the other side, and we're able to share voice, video, screen shares, all that good stuff between those through the Amazon Chime SDK media services, and all of this is controlled through the AWS SDK. So we do things like create meeting, which will set up the servers and set up the resources. We do things like create attendee, which gives us our authorization tokens and things like that in order to bring these together. Now, then the trick is getting that information to the right place at the right time. And that's what we have. Some of the other parts and pieces that we're going to build today will do that. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about the WebRTC sort of half of this equation. From the telephony side, what we have are we have kind of three big groupings here. We have call analytics. Call analytics is a way that we can extract information from this call. So if we have a SIP call going through here, we can apply AI and ML services to that. Things like Amazon Transcribe Call Analytics. We can do things like recording. We can even do things like tonal sentiment based analysis on a call that we have running through here. And we do this through our SIP trunking resources. So we bring all this in through SIP. So we can either do this as sort of what I call a pass through, where we're providing PSTN access, or we can do this through SIPREC. And with SIPREC, you're just kind of forking the media over to us, and we add that AI to it. The one we're going to kind of focus on today mostly is this PSTN audio. What PSTN audio is going to do is it's going to be a programmable telephony service. And so we can use this PSTN audio to act as a bridge between the meeting that we've created and the SIP side of this. And so we're going to use this as sort of the glue that ties a lot of these things together, and we can manipulate this call as it's going on. So when I see an event, I see that the meeting has started. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to bridge these things together. And we'll show you the code as to what that looks like for that. So let's take a look at what we can do with the PSTN audio. So with the PSTN audio, we can bring this call in from a phone. We can bring this call in from a voice connector, and that's sort of the SIP component that we're talking about. And what we do is we add on a Lambda to this. So this Lambda, so if you're not familiar, the Lambda is kind of a serverless code that you can run. And this serverless code is going to run, and basically anytime a event happens on this PSTN audio, so think something like new inbound call, we're gonna invoke that Lambda. That Lambda is going to be invoked, and it's going to say, what should we do now that we have this new inbound call? Well, we're going to answer it, right? So that's like kind of the first step that we would normally do. Now we're going to play an audio, right? So we can take and use Poly to generate speech and play that back towards the participant. So I answered the call. Now I'm going to return back with Poly and say, thank you for calling, something like that. And this is kind of, we give you a lot of tools here, and you can kind of build these in lots of different ways. So we could turn this and we could send this over to Alex. So we could say, okay, let's send this over to AlexBot to handle for an IVR. We could also just bridge that over to another phone number. So if I have, if I want to do some like intelligent call routing, I can say calls from this phone number, I'm going to send over to this phone number. We can make that distinction. And this is what the piece that we're going to be exploring today is this Amazon Chime SDK meeting. So I can act as a bridge between a phone and an SDK meeting and tie these two things together. And eventually we're going to tie these things together with a voice connector. So this is let me use SIP in order to make this egress out. And the really cool thing when we do that is that we can preserve data. So we're going to see what this looks like. this is kind of a mock-up of what it is that we're going to be building today. And again, this is all deployable, so we'll give you a link to deploy this. Everything you see here will deploy into your account for you, and you can kind of get in there and play with it and see how it works and see what it is we're doing. So on the left hand side, where we see this customer um, icon, just think of this as just like a web page. This could be a mobile app. This could be Apple, Android. We could have those different types of apps there, and it's going to be front ended by in this case a CloudFront and an S3 React based app. So we'll show you what that looks like here in a second, and that app is going to be running. It's going to be connected to an API gateway that is tied into this Lambda. And so what's going to happen is there's going to be a little button on the screen. You're going to click the button, and in this case, we're just going to have a phone number that we type in. We take that phone number and we send it over to there, and that's going to start off the process. Let's see here. So we're going to see something like this. So this is what that app looks like. We have a phone number in here. We click the dial button, and once we click the dial button, we're going to engage this. We're going to use this client in order to make that request out to that API gateway. So this is some of the code of what that's going to look like. And you see here, this is actually us making that request out. So this is the dial out request. So we're going to say, I want to call this phone number in here. The information that we get back from that request is then going to be used to start the meeting. And we say meeting here, and it's a little, it's just kind of what we call it. I mean, that's the technical term within the APIs for this. But this is just a one-on-one call, right? So right now we're just going to be talking about taking a WebRTC client and joining them into this meeting, and that's where you see that the meeting manager join and then the meeting manager start. That is what is going to be actually starting this meeting. See a couple questions here. There is a Flutter SDK client. I don't think so. I think I think you're asking there if that's an Android thing. I think, right? I don't think that there is one for that. We do have Android SDKs. We can check on that and get you a link for that, though. The other question, is there a kind of workflow interface to connect and program these components? This is mostly just like you have to build these things yourself, right? So I use CDK for a lot of this in order to build these programs and applications, and that's what we'll get into here as part of this demo. But no, there's not like a workflow that you might be thinking about like that. All right, so now that we've made this request out to the to our API gateway, we have to do a bunch of things. And so what's going to happen here is we're going to take that request. Hey, I want to make a dial out, and we're gonna do a couple things. We're gonna do a create meeting. So the create meeting is sort of the first step in starting up this meeting. And so you can see here we're going to just kind of use a random external meeting ID. It's not super important. We're going to use the client request token as the request ID as the client request token. Most of this stuff kind of doesn't matter. The important thing is you're going to get a big JSON blob back from this. You're going to get a big object, and it's going to have all the information that we need in order to start this meeting. And so you can see that here, this dial out response, we get the meeting information, and we get the attendee information, and that's what we use to start the meeting. There's just a big blob of JSON that you kind of don't have to worry about, but you have to make sure to get it to the right place at the right time. And so that's what we're going to be creating right here. That's what this meeting info is. So once we've created this meeting info, this meeting, now we can create a attendee for this meeting. In this particular case, we have to create two, right? We have to create an attendee for the client, the person who is sitting at the app and making this request, and then we have to make an attendee for the person that they're calling, which is a SIP endpoint. And so we have to create two of these attendees. We're just going to call this twice and get two different attendees back. Once we have that information, this one's a little busy. but this is sort of where a lot of the magic happens. So we're going to take all that information. We're gonna kind of bundle it up. We know my SIP media application. We know the the meeting info. We know the join token. We're going to take all this information. We're going to package it up. And what we're going to do is we're going to send it to this API called Create SIP Media Application Call, which is a mouthful, and it's a lot to say. But what it does is does some cool things. It's going to start a new call. So we are creating this call using that SIP media application. We're going to call it to this number. This number is kind of a special number internally. We use it so that we can join actually straight into a meeting. That's why we're passing these SIP headers that you see here. And we're going to take all that information. We're going to package it up. We're going to send it off. And what's going to happen is we're going to get a new outbound call on our SIP media application. So we've returned this information. This is where it gets a little confusing too, because we're kind of splitting and doing two things at once, right? So on one hand, we're creating a meeting, we're getting that information back to the client. On the other hand, we're also sending this call over to our PSTN audio, in which case now we have to do things there. So we kind of split this process into two. We have to join it all back together, and that's what that PSTN audio there in the middle is going to do. It's going to tie everything back together. So we've returned the information back to the client, and at this point, we see this meeting provider. This is part of those React components that I was talking about. It's almost this easy. There's not much more that you need to do in order to have a meeting set up, a full WebRTC. You can do voice, video, screen share, all that good stuff, all provided with these React components. Really easy to get started on this. So there's video tiles, and we're not using video tiles in this particular use case. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. That's the sample that we're going to be talking about. And the React components are going to do a lot of this work for you. So we're going to take and we're going to say, if you want to build a video tile, great, video tile. If you want to add control bars, right? So you see in the screenshot, we have little dial buttons and things like that. I didn't even have to build that. All of that was built with the React components that are already exposed to you. So it's really easy to get set up and going with these React components to build this WebRTC application for you. So we've created a meeting. We've made a request to start a meeting, right? We've created the meeting. We've created the attendee. We've passed that information back to the client, and so now that client has started up the process to join the meeting. And now what we need to do is we need to go into that PSTN audio, and we need to tie that together. So we've made a request into that PSTN audio to join into this meeting. So we've joined the PSTN audio into the meeting, and now what we're going to do a thing called call and bridge. So in this particular case, we're actually going to call and bridge out to a cell phone rather than to a SIP target. But you can build this with both of these in mind. This one just happens to be to PSTN, and we're going to say, let's bridge it. We're going to bridge a connection from the meeting into this PSTN, and now all of a sudden, when that call answers, we have a full RTP pass through from our web client all the way through to our meetings, then through the SIP media application, and out to the PSTN or out to a SIP target. And when we send that out to the SIP target, we can preserve these headers. So I can say, I don't know if you saw, there was a couple of notifications there about request or email. So the demo deploys with Cognito, which is sort of an authorization, and you put in your email address in order to sign up for it there. And we can pass that information. So I know who I was when I logged in, right? So I logged into my client. I typed in my, signed in with my email address, and I signed in with my password. I can pass all of that information, and you see that down here into this voice connector side. I can pass all of that information from the client through my PSTN audio all the way down to an agent, to the PBX, to whoever it is that's going to be answering this call. And so we don't have to ask the person, again, for further authorization. We've already captured that, right? So we don't need to do that again. We've already captured that information. Anything that you can imagine that you would have on that client, we can take that information, pass that all the way through, and preserve that information. And so that's kind of one of the really cool things about this, because we're also using this voice connector. All of those call analytics that we talked about before, where we can do things like transcribe call analytics and tonal sentiment analysis, we can layer all of those things on to that as well. So we've kind of created a little demo here that'll let you do things like build a application for your phone that will allow you to, instead of having contact us and actually call out to the PSTN, you can actually contact us and keep them within your application. So that's sort of the real big benefit there of, can we contain this caller within our application, or do we have to go out to to something else? Well, now we can actually tie all of that together and keep them in that application for the duration of the conversation. Question here. Can the 2 number on the PSTN, can it work in the Middle East area? We can make a call to basically anywhere. We can make the phone number called out to there. It might make some sense in a case like that to use SIP for that, and to actually bring that as a SIP call out. There might be some benefits to doing it that way, just for latencies and things like that. There's really no restrictions. Once we're sending this over on SIP, we can really send that call, wherever you need to.
Awesome. Thank you, Court. Really appreciate the tour through connecting WebRTC and SIP with the Amazon Chime SDK. And thanks also to our viewers who already asked some questions, and Court addressed those through the presentation. Anyone else who'd like to ask a question, now is a great time to do that. You can put your question in as a comment on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitch, whatever platform you're viewing this on, and we will address that before we wrap up in a few minutes. Court, you talked about the biggest advantage of doing click-to-call is keeping the user in the application, keeping them in the context of your brand, of the application as a whole. I think that's really important aspect of this, right? Because you think about a traditional, just call us at this number, that they're leaving the website, they're going to their phone, they may get distracted and walk away, right? If it's, send us an email. I mean, I probably did this 4 times already this morning, where I went to my email to do one thing and I got distracted and did something else instead, right? Yeah. So the more you can keep your customers, your users directly in the context of the application, the more likely you are to resolve the issue that they're running into in customer service, or running into a sales, close the sale that you're trying to close with them, if it's in that scenario. So what are other kind of, what sort of use cases do you see this in, and this particularly valuable in?
So I think one of the other kind of hidden aspects of that is that you can use this to do intelligent call routing as well. So let's say I'm on my bank's app and I have a problem depositing a check, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm on that page in the application, and I press the contact us button, and it routes it to the SIP target. Well, instead of routing it to sort of in the IVR in the worst case scenario, or just kind of a generic agent, if I can route this to someone who specializes in issues with depositing checks, that's cut off time. That's made agents' lives easier, right? Because they're not fielding 1,000 different random questions. It's made my life easier because I'm not trying to fight through an IVR. I think that that piece of like eliminating some of those IVR steps can be just a huge saver for kind of everyone involved, right? You're going to do the things like pre-screens and make sure that troubleshootings and things like that. But if somebody's stuck and they need some help, let's get them to the help as fast as we can, right?
Yeah. And with as much context as possible, right? I think you talked about that in your presentation as well, that we can send along some information. So not only do that I'm having trouble depositing a check through the mobile app. But presumably you could pass along also like my username or something that indicates I've already been authenticated, right? Because
Exactly.
that's always the most annoying thing about a customer service conversation is when you have to repeat all your details 4 times, right? As you get transferred between people.
It drives me crazy. So I know it drives other people crazy as well. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And in one of your earlier slides too, you kind of showed the whole flow, and you made a mention of things like Amazon Lex for a chatbot integration. Talk a little bit about where do you see the use cases for chatbot and human agent, and how to keep that context consistent through those.
Yeah. So I mean, you can conceivably build this with the same Lex bot that is being used for chat, right? So you can text into Lex on your webpage, and then let's say that we do need to escalate this. Now let's escalate this and take it to a Lex bot audio, right? Because I'm driving and I shouldn't be texting or something like that. Probably shouldn't be talking on the phone either. But but now we've taken this step up to a Lex bot. We're going to do some more processing on there. All of this is still all tied together. And so now we can kind of incorporate and keep all that information. When you talk about the Lex bot and the PSTN audio, the really, again, it's all about this preservation of information. I talk about that a lot because it's like really, really important. And so when you send that call over to Lex and Lex processes it and it gets results back, all that information comes back to the PSTN audio. So everything is preserved from Lex, and now I can make an intelligent decision based on that information that came back from Lex to say, oh, this person needs help here. I'm going to send them to this phone number. I'm going to send them to this department or something like that. So again, there's a lot of that preservation of information so that we can keep customers happy, agents happy. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly. And keeping them happy and keeping them confident through the conversation also, that that you're sending them to the right people. Those little cues, like I already, the context is transferred from agent to agent. I mean,
I did that you've called before yesterday, and
right?
You're having problems. Yeah.
I see you're a platinum member, thank you.
Yeah.
Like those little things make a difference for people too. I mean, I had I did a very manual integration of a chatbot and a live agent a couple of months ago. I was traveling not long after I saw you at Enterprise Connect, and I had a very frustrating airline experience. I won't name the airline because they're normally good, but I was personally integrating a chatbot and a live agent in the sense that I was chatting with the chatbot, which I think was a human behind the bot, but was not being a very helpful human in this case. So I'm text chatting with one agent or a bot, I'm not sure, getting nowhere. At the same time, I've got another human agent on a speakerphone. So I guess you could say I personally was doing the integration between the two and trying to get just like, please, just somebody help me. One of you help me. And part of it was, my frustration in that moment was it was a really weird situation where they completely lost one of my tickets. But neither avenue was really giving me any confidence in the conversation that they were really there to help me, that they wanted to send me to the right place, all that sort of thing. So these cues really matter. And so that's maybe a transition to some of the other things you talked about too, that through like the call analytics, we can also get sentiment analysis, and we can get some information about the transcription of the calls and summary. So how angry was I? That sort of thing, right? So talk a little bit more about that integration with the call analytics and what that offers.
Yeah, that one's really, really exciting. We're really, really excited about this because not only does it let you do things like automatically transcribe these calls and do the sentiment analysis, but it lets you take action on those types of things, right? Additionally, there's ways to do automatic alerts. So when I see keywords that are coming through, I can make actions based off of those, and this has been doable with the Amazon Chime SDK and sort of within AWS before. We've just made it a lot easier. So before you kind of had to build it with KVS, and you had to build a lot of things that were hard to deal with, and frankly they were difficult. We've smoothed a lot of that out. So now we're just getting really easy to to read streams, and really easy to work with notifications to say, hey, this person had, X amount of sentiment negative for X amount of time. Let's send this over and alert a supervisor. So we can send out a notification to the supervisor to say, hey, there's a problem on this call. You might want to get involved. And, you can build the logic of this kind of however you would like, pretty easily, right? All of this is just kind of notifications and events and things like that you can react to.
You can do that in real time during the call or
absolutely.
as a post-call action.
Absolutely. We've got some really cool ones where the other thing we're doing is like a meeting summarization. So if you take a call and you're listening to the agent, you listen to the customer, and they're talking for 15 minutes. A couple minutes after that, we can actually summarize that entire call by recording it, passing it to a large language model, and then sending it over to the agent to say, hey, this is what we think happened on that call. Do you want to add any notes? So we can reduce that agent wrap-up time by a lot by providing those notes for them ahead of time, rather than kind of making them do all that work. So yeah, we've got some really exciting things that we're doing with that. That's and the tonal sentiment analysis that we talked about there. So we've traditionally, the way that sentiment analysis has worked within AWS has been, we use comprehend. Well, comprehend is going to take the text from transcribe and interpret that for sentiment. What we can actually do now is tonal based sentiment analysis. So the actual pitch of your voice is what is determining this, rather than the words that were being said. So we can do things a little faster. We don't have to wait for sentences to be spoken. We can get that sentiment in even faster. That was really cool to see, like to see the graph of somebody's tone going through the call that's a really neat one to see. We've got a cool workshop for that.
I bet I'd like to see that. I suspect that my tone gives away my emotions very, very quickly.
You'd be surprised. Like it's sometimes it's fun to try to say angry words in a happy voice.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So it's a fun one to play with. And it's really, it's really powerful that we can do that in real time, right? Boom, we're getting you that sentiment right away.
Yeah. It's super powerful. Anything, every second counts in a call center type of situation, in a contact center, whether it's customer support or a sales scenario. So anything you can do helping agents post call or helping them during the call or management, these are huge efficiency savings for companies. And obviously that's a key thing that companies are super interested in. Is efficiency.
We've gotten this request a couple times too from customers where, let's say that like an agent had, like 3 really bad calls in a row. Let's give that agent a break, right? So you can just even like the mental health of agents, we can improve that by, putting in some of this logic to say, hey, this was a lot of negative sentiment that they just went through. Let's, cut them a break or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's not it's a great example of how it's not about punitive to the agent. I mean, the agent probably didn't do anything to deserve it. Right. They just got 3 upset customers in a row. So yeah, I like that. That's a great example of using it. One other quick question on the summaries. Are those are they trained on anything in particular, or if you had a use case where you wanted some specific training, how could you handle a situation like that?
Sure. So the demo that we have, and there's a demo out there for this. I can get you a link for that. We can send it out later. It uses a Cohere large language model is in the demo, but kind of you can use any of these large language models as long as they work with like SageMaker, which is a pretty common way to inject these large language models. So you can tune those to I'm not quite a SageMaker expert, so I don't know exactly all of the ins and outs of that. But I think that one of the key points there is that we can keep this within your AWS account. So we're not going to make a request out to the internet for something like this. This language model is contained within your account. You control it. You've got access to it. No one else has access to it. So you're not making requests out to the API, to kind of a public API to do these things.
That's a really great point to make, because I think that's certainly one of the things with a lot of large language models and AI services that you see is that,
Oh yeah,
depending on the version of it you're using or the particular vendor, you may be giving them training data with what is essentially
right.
confidential company information. And obviously you
Yeah,
don't want to do that.
we don't
So,
want to send PII out like that.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, we've got a question from Ashraf. Wants to
Yep.
know, kind of explain a little bit the difference between Amazon Chime and Asterisk PBX, how they work
So
together.
it's funny. I use Asterisks all the time. There's one that's deployed in this demo. I use them constantly. They are the PBX. We are sort of the transport for that PBX. So we're not really like that. You can't register a phone to us in that sense like you would a SIP client to the Asterisk. Um, I use them constantly. Like if you see my demos, there's almost always an asterisk involved because I need that, right? I need that ability to answer the call, and I need that ability to play audio, do things like that, and make phone calls. So yeah, we use them constantly, but it's not really like that. They're more complementary than supplementary.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. And a number of people thanking you for your comments. Thanks definitely for sharing your expertise today, Court. Really appreciate it. If anybody has any last minute questions, now's your last few seconds to get those in. Court, I wanted to ask you just before we wrap up too about you mentioned just now, like keeping things within AWS in terms of queries that we might send to large language model, that sort of thing. So that, and you mentioned PII too. So that gets things like HIPAA compliance. And so take a moment and just talk a little bit about any sort of security compliance concerns that developers and enterprises should keep in mind when doing an integration like this.
Yeah, and again, a lot of this comes back to the AWS shared security model, right? So that's going to be the answer for a lot of these questions. We're going to provide those resources to you. We're going to secure our component, and then customer would be responsible for securing that. So in this demo that we have here, we use Cognito, right? It's a it's a pretty reasonable way to do that auth to make sure that nobody's hitting these APIs. So all the APIs in this are secured with Cognito auth on those. But yeah, I mean, like you really do want to take that seriously. Like there's a lot of fraud in the telephony space out there, and we really don't want you to open yourself up to that. So you got to really kind of think about those. On our voice connectors, we support TLS and SRTP. We support allow listing for specific ranges, and we've got a lot of mechanisms in place to protect on there. Yeah, I highly encourage everyone to make sure that those are included in your design. You don't want to try to be secure through obfuscation, right? You want to actually go and actually do it, right? You don't want to take that chance.
Absolutely. I'm going to put your slides back up here for a moment just so everybody can see again the GitHub URL for the samples you were talking about today, as well as how to get in touch with UCourt. So thanks for sharing that information. And we put that link in the comments for those watching live, and we'll make sure to have that up in the blog post on WebRTC Ventures after that gets published following this episode. If there's any other links you want to send us, Court, we'll be sure to include that in it as well. Just one last quick question. You showed a number of great code examples in there. Appreciate it. Are there any, if you think about somebody using this, maybe comes from more of a web developer background than a SIP developer, for example, are there any error handling scenarios in particular that they should be thinking about in this type of an integration?
Yeah. So one of the nice things about the PSTN audio specifically is you don't need to know that SIP aspect of it. We're going to take care of that for you. And when I say like new inbound call, I mean like that is literally the event type, right? So you don't have to see invite and have to figure out all the ins and outs of what that invite means. It means, hey, here's a new inbound call. And so if you want to hang up, you literally send it the hang up action, right? So you don't have to figure out how to craft all these things. So that PSTN audio does a lot of that sort of SIP to human translation for you.
Perfect.
Which is, yeah, that's really nice. And it does have all that error checking baked into it, right? We have action successful and we have action failure and things like that. So we have the ability to recover from from incidents like that. But yeah, the ability to not have to know SIP that's pretty important.
Yeah, that's a huge benefit, to be sure. All right. Well, thanks again so much for joining us, Court. Really appreciate you taking the time today. Any final thoughts you want to leave us with, or where people should go to learn more about Amazon Chime SDK?
Yeah, no, take a look at some of those links that are in there. This GitHub is a great place to start for this ClickToCall demo. There's a bunch more, right? We have, if you go to my GitHub profile, I have links to almost all of the ones that I've built, and there's quite a few of them out there, and they're all fun. I like building these. I like building these workshops as well. So there's some good workshops out there as well.
Excellent. Well, really appreciate it, Court. Thanks so much for your time. And I should mention too, our team at WebRTC.Ventures, we're members of the Amazon Partner Network, we're AWS APN members and system integration partners to the Amazon Chime SDK as well. So welcome to follow up with us as well at WebRTC.Ventures, and we can work closely with Court and the team there as well to get whatever you need built for this. So, Court, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
And as always, this video will be available on the WebRTC Ventures YouTube channel, as well as our blog at WebRTC.Ventures. And our next episode will be on Wednesday, June 21st, a little bit earlier than usual, 9 a.m. Eastern US, and our guest will be Saul from the Jitsi project. And the reason we're doing it that early is that Saul will be joining us live from the ComCon conference in the UK. So we're accommodating the schedule there in the UK. Hope you can join us there. And if you're interested in attending or learning more about the ComCon conference, our team at WebRTC Ventures are proud to be sponsors of that this year. You can learn more about them as well, and Dan's work in organizing that at comcon.xyz. Well, that is it for today. To find out more about our upcoming episodes, follow us on Twitter at WebRTC Ventures, on Twitch, LinkedIn, YouTube, and join our email list at WebRTC.Ventures. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. Let's make it live.
Thanks for joining us for WebRTC Live. Visit our website at WebRTC.Ventures to learn more about our custom design and development services, and to learn more about upcoming episodes of WebRTC Live.